In today's video, we're going to be decluttering 2 more areas of the house, and this is episode 3 of my big New Year declutter series. As you probably know by now, I've been using random generators and timers to help me keep on top of my house for over a year now. It's what we're doing in this video. I spin a wheel and it tells me what area to clean and declutter. And doing little things like this has absolutely transformed my house, but all the mini life hacks in the world won't keep your house tidy if you have too much stuff. So let's get into the video and let's talk about it. So first thing on my list is to declutter Ike's clothes. Ike is my youngest son, for anyone new, and we're going to go through the drawers and get rid of things he's grown out of and things he hasn't even grown into yet. Because I've gotten into a habit of holding on to my eldest son's clothes, knowing that my youngest will fit into them at some point. But the issue there is there's a 5-year age gap, so that's 5 years of just holding on to more and more clothes, and it's just not sustainable. A few years ago, I put loads of them into those vacuum-sealed bag things, and I put them into the attic to sort through periodically. And do you know what? I've never gotten them down and sorted through them, because it's just not in my nature to do things like that. Oop, a ghost at the door? Don't worry, it's the wind. I always have the windows open. But yeah, if I don't see something often, I'll just forget about it. And I can't even get into the attic. Someone else has to go in there for me. And basically, I'm just filling the attic with things I'd like to reuse, but realistically won't. And this series is all about taking accountability and accepting things about ourselves and finding ways to work with our brains. We're not living on the hope that one day we'll wake up as a new person this year. I've always been like that. I'll hold on to this idea that one day I'm going to wake up and suddenly be on the ball and organised, and things will all fall into place without much effort on my part at all. We're not doing that anymore. It just prolongs things. And this way of thinking reinforces the idea that we're at the mercy of things outside of ourselves, that we're not capable of working towards change and we just have to hope that change magically happens. Please ignore Will Ferrell's Buddy the Elf face behind me. I know that it's a bit of a jump scare. Anyway, I started this channel 2 years ago with the ultimate goal of gaining back control of my house and my life. Because you'll know this if you've been here from the start, I was drowning in mess. I had no systems in place, no coping mechanisms. As a mum, I felt so guilty. I just did not know how other people managed to keep their houses clean. And I felt really powerless. And so I started the channel as a way to hold myself accountable, but also with the belief that I had the ability to figure things out. You literally don't have to know what you're doing or the best way to start. You just have to start. One thing I've learned along the way is if you're putting hours and hours of work into tidying each day, and then it can look like a pigsty again in seconds, which was what was happening to me, chances are you've got too much stuff. Or more stuff than you can personally deal with. We all have different levels of tolerance and organisational skills and mobility, you name it. I struggle with something called executive dysfunction, and this often means I don't notice mess happening, I don't remember to pick up as I go along, and I only notice mess has crept up when it's glaringly obvious and overwhelming, which is something I'm working on. I've been working very hard at putting systems in place that help me to remember, but through all of this, I've learnt that I am one of those people who can't have clutter in their homes. I just can't. It's something that's taken me a long while to accept and come to terms with, because I'm one of those people who likes to hold on to stuff. As I said a minute ago, I hold on to things just in case and for sentimental reasons, and it makes me so sad to part with things. But as long as I keep more than I can handle in this house, trying to keep on top of it every day is going to feel like shoveling snow in a snowstorm. So I'm trying to be ruthless and strong for my own good and for the good of my family. And it doesn't have to be an immediate thing. It can be a gradual process. A lady commented on another video that she keeps trying to declutter but gets too overwhelmed and doesn't get very far each time. And I think we can put so much pressure on ourselves to make this big impactful change all in one go. Positive change can look like decluttering one small drawer for just 10 minutes or choosing 5 things around the house to get rid of that day, and then you've done it and it's something to be proud of. Decluttering is a process and something that you can build upon over time, And the more you do it, the easier it gets. Now, you're probably wondering, Remy, why do you have your Christmas decorations up in February still? And it's because I am practicing the art of slowing down and working on building a life that doesn't push me into burnout. I'm trying to prove to myself that it isn't the end of the world and I haven't failed at life if my Christmas tree isn't taken down on January 1st. I've been pottering around and taking decorations down on random days since January, whilst I've been getting other things done around the house. I keep saying this and you're probably sick of hearing it by now, but I struggle to multitask and split my attention on different tasks throughout the day. I tend to zone in and hyper-focus on one specific thing, and then I fall behind on other things, and other things get neglected. If I'm focusing on a project, for example, it doesn't take long before the house is complete chaos, and then there's a backlog of housework, and then I spend all my time focusing on that, and then something else gets neglected and builds up. My relationships suffer because I haven't been present. And this is a cycle I want to break. And this is why I haven't taken every Christmas decoration down in one go. I'm focusing on learning how to split my attention. It may seem silly to some, but it'll make total sense to others. And honestly, since I've taken that pressure off of myself to do everything all in one go, life just feels so much lighter. And I'm sure you'll be able to notice here that is reflected in the way my home looks. And I'm really excited to see how the rest of this year goes and how I'm able to grow as a person and what insights I have to share with you as I go. So as always, we're doing a 20-minute speed clean after the declutter. The random generator chose the living room this time. And I do this to keep on top of things whilst everything's all up in the air with the house, and it helps me feel less overwhelmed. Anyway, I started decluttering last year. I think it was the year before actually. But last year was the first year I started taking it seriously. And yet, people would still comment constantly, you need to declutter, you need to get rid of stuff. Not knowing that I'd already started my decluttering journey and I'd already come so far with it, and that what they were seeing was the house with less stuff. Last year I'd decluttered to a point I was comfortable with and capable of, if that makes sense. And it might not have been everybody's idea of a good declutter, but I was not at the point mentally to go full on minimalist, and I'm still not. My goal is simply improvement every year, a healthier year mentally, and a house that's easier to manage this year than it was the last. The only person I'm in competition with and comparing myself to is myself. Now, I'm going to show you some images of how my house looked when I first started this channel, because I really want to hammer it home that change is possible with tiny little steps over time, even if it feels like it's not happening fast enough, or there are setbacks and you feel like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, it's still a step forward. The difference in my home between now and just 2 years ago is drastic. There was always stuff piled on the sides, all over the floor, all up the stairs. Appliances were dirty, skirting boards were dirty, the sinks and toilets always had stains in them. And no matter how hard I worked, because I still did work so hard, I just couldn't keep up. My house still does get messy now, of course, but the difference is it's not unmanageable these days. It doesn't take days on end to get back to base level, or huge 24, 48 hour long cleanups that take away from my family and my hobbies and my ability to live life fully. There is a difference between a lived-in home with toys all over the floor at the end of the day and a sink full of pots and an overflowing laundry basket, and literally feeling like your house is swallowing you up and ruining your life. Our house still gets messy every day, but largely due to decluttering, it's something we're able to work together and clean up by the end of the night now, or I can potter about and deal with it in the morning. And even now, I do still have bad days and even weeks where it all just gets on top of me. Just last summer I made a burnout series that I've still not finished posting, but the videos are all filmed. And I had gotten to the point beforehand where I felt like, okay, I've got a good system going on, I'm keeping on top of things, I'm feeling confident, and then it very quickly kind of reverted back to chaos. And I believe that to be because I was pushing myself too hard, and again, not being able to find that day-to-day balance, which is something I speak a lot about in my videos. Just interrupting myself here to say that I'm touching up some parts of this table with paint. We had those child safety bubbles on the edges, and when we took them off, it ripped loads of the vinyl. And getting a new coffee table isn't a priority right now, so I just use paint to make it less visible. But yeah, now, when the house does revert to anything like its former state, I have confidence in my abilities and I have mechanisms in place that help me pull myself back up when I'm ready. And I hope these videos are able to pull you out of the pits when you find yourself there too. And I am just so glad I've been able to film all of the ups and downs and take you along in this process to show you that progress isn't linear, just as our moods and experiences as human beings aren't linear. The amount of times I told myself over the last few years, I am never going to let my house get bad again. And then it got bad again, and my confidence and self-esteem would be knocked to the floor. But another positive aspect of documenting this process is that I've noticed that each time it got bad, it wasn't as bad as the time before. And that's a type of progress that we can often overlook. And it's always important to remember as well that mess doesn't make you a good person or a bad person, no matter the extent of it. What does matter is that we don't give up on ourselves and resign ourselves to this idea that this is just the way we are and this is the way we're wired and nothing's going to change. Yes, some of us have certain setbacks that make things harder, and I'm not going to sweep that fact under the carpet. It could be anything from mental health issues, ADHD, grief, finances, or physical things like chronic health issues. And whilst it's important to acknowledge that yes, some things are going to be harder for us, and we might have more bad days or more occasions where we don't know how we're going to feel from one day to the next, my executive dysfunction can be debilitating, and you'll have seen that in these videos. I forget to brush my teeth, and I had to have my house key cut about 10 times last year because I will lose things constantly. But we're not powerless. We just have to get a bit more inventive in the way we go about things and find ways that work for us. Even if change happens at a snail's pace, or we have to ask others for help, there is no shame in asking for help. Or if people from the outside looking in feel like we could be doing more or doing better, they can only see things from their lived experience. And the only thing that matters is, are you making yourself proud? I always say, a lot of us were kind of flung into adulthood without all of the tools we needed to function in the best way, or with brains that hadn't caught up with us yet. The latter was definitely me. And as I've moved into my 30s, I notice more and more every year how much I've grown emotionally and how much I hadn't grasped in my 20s that just seemed to click one day. And no amount of pushing myself or reading or learning or observing others could have gotten me there faster. It really did seem like certain light bulbs just went on one day. I read somewhere that sometimes, in those of us with ADHD, the frontal lobe develops more slowly, and our executive age can be different to our actual age. The frontal lobe and with it the prefrontal cortex control things like decision making and emotional regulation and executive functioning. And so it checks out that we might feel behind in life when it comes to certain things. And that can be why we look around at other people and it seems like they have it all together. And can I just emphasise seems like, because we never know what's going on and what other people are dealing with really. And ADHD is a spectrum with differing levels of severity, and everyone's experience and mind is different, neurodivergent or not. So what applies to one person may not apply to another. Some people will be hyper-independent, some people will never be fully independent, and some people achieve certain life moments later than others. And I always try and remind my brother of this when he's feeling behind about where he is in life and he's stressing that all of his old friends have homes and partners and kids by now. It's never too late. There are people who achieve their dreams in their 40s, 50s, even their 70s. As long as we're here, we have potential. So anyway, please bear that in mind and remember I'm talking about my own personal experience here. I'm not making sweeping generalisations. And you don't have to be neurodivergent in order for this to apply to you. But I remember being in my mid-20s and I really did not have any semblance of foresight or planning for the future. Bear in mind, I'd just become a mum straight out of uni, but I had no savings, I couldn't drive, still can't drive. I was totally dependent on my parents. And I just had this mindset that that's a future problem. It's not a now problem. Future me will deal with things like a house and a car and how to afford things like clothes and school trips for my child. One day it'll all just work out, and if it doesn't, future me will come up with a plan. And this is because my concept of time has always been a little bit skewed. I struggled to conceptualise or put into perspective anything that wasn't now or in the very near future. And so I was very impulsive, even when it came to having my son with no safety net. And after I had my second son, it finally dawned on me just how fast time moves, and that I needed to kind of get my act together. And my brother was very much the same as me. Whereas I have stepsisters, one of whom, she's a year older than me, and she was already on the property ladder and had been saving since her teens. And my younger sister, who's 5 years younger than me, similar story. And they got jobs and started saving as soon as they were able. Me and my brother, on the other hand, different story. My brother still lives with my dad, and I'm only just able to say, thanks to social media really, that I'm building up a deposit for a house. I didn't get a proper job and move out of my mum's house until my first son was almost 3, and that would have made me 26. So I had a lot of firsts, like renting my first house and getting my first proper job after I'd already become a parent. And then I experienced what it was like to live paycheck to paycheck. And later down the line, I wished I'd have taken the initiative and saved a bit of money whilst I was in the fortunate position to be able to save. But like I said earlier, we can only see things from the point of awareness that we've grown to. And we all get there at our own pace. My dad's only just gotten a mortgage in his 50s, and that's due to growing up poor and not having the opportunity to save money like we did. And so he's only just gotten to the point now where he's able to get a mortgage, and he'll be paying that off into his 70s. Not if I have anything to do with it, but still. This highlights a whole other issue that I could rant about, and that is life isn't a level playing field for everybody. And there are so many factors at play here, but it's a privilege to be able to save money, and so many people don't have that opportunity because every penny they earn is spent on surviving. And as you can probably guess, I'm going to come back to that topic because I've found myself mid-ramble, but the second declutter of this video is my bedroom cupboard, and this is what it looked like when I went to declutter it last year. So as you can see, there's a massive improvement, and that's what I'm going for, improvement every year. It still needs another big declutter, but the main issue now is functionality. Last year when I decluttered, I wanted to make this cupboard pretty as well. I have a whole video on that declutter, but I wanted to turn it into a kind of cosy haven in my bedroom. So I'd bought fairy lights and these pretty wicker drawers, and they were pushed right to the back of the cupboard, so I kind of had to pull half my body in to reach anything. And as you can imagine, it got tiresome. And eventually I started pulling the drawers out and leaving them to make them more accessible, and so that I could actually see the contents, because if you're anything like me, if you can't see something, you'll forget it exists. So this time round, I'm focusing less on aesthetics and more on practicality. And I'm coming to terms with the fact that that's just how it has to be in my home at the minute. Functional and Remy-proof. And Remy-proofing basically means making something more likely or less likely to happen in this house. So for this cupboard, I'm focusing on making it less likely that I will just lob things in here willy-nilly. I want no more doom piles in this house. So I have a plan. First, we're going to do what we always do, and that's pull everything out so it's all visible and so that we can't back out and decide we'll do it at another time. We're going to do it now, and we're getting it done. And by the way, if you want to see the first 2 parts of this decluttering series, they're in a playlist and it's called Decluttering 2025. So one of the biggest hurdles when it came to this cupboard was how to store bigger things like books. Me and Charlie struggle for storage in this room. The top half of this cupboard is his, and then he has a wardrobe for his clothes. Ike has that chest of drawers for his, and I keep my clothes under the bed. So what we really need to do is get a shelf up for the books, but for now, I thought, let's get one of those children's mini bookcases for inside my cupboard. And another one of my goals for 2025 is to push myself out of my comfort zone. So I thought, Charlie's at work, I'm not going to mess about and waste time waiting for him to come home and build it. I'm going to get the instructions out, I'm going to find his toolkit, and I'm going to build it. Even if it takes me all day, which it more or less did. But I had Desperate Housewives on in the background, I was home alone, and I gave it a go. It seemed like such a simple thing to build, but it was an absolute nightmare. Some of the holes weren't big enough for the screws, and I had to find Charlie's drill and then watch a YouTube video to figure out how to use that. I cut my thumb, but we got there in the end. Usually with things like this, I'd take one look at the instructions or reach one hurdle and I'd be like, nah, I'm out. Someone else can do this because this is not for me. But I don't want to always rely on other people for things. It's nice to know that I don't have to do everything on my own, but if push comes to shove, I want to be able to. And this is why this year I'm starting my driving lessons again. I have been talking about this on this channel since the beginning, and I've been saving up, but something's always been blocking me from actually finding a driving instructor and starting. Instructor? I think I've just been scared of the what ifs. What if I fail again? What if it gets to a point down the line where I'm worse off financially and I can't afford the car anymore? Just silly thoughts that have been hindering me. So we're doing less worrying this year and more doing. Pushing myself past mental blocks and out of my comfort zone has absolutely gotten me to the place I'm at now. It's the reason I have this little house and my job and this channel. These things are things I thought I would never achieve. I never thought I'd be confident enough to even be in a relationship. I was so painfully shy and insecure pretty much all my life. And this leads me back to what I was saying about feeling behind in life when it comes to the people around us. When a lot of our peers were getting their first jobs and entering into relationships and going out and expanding their horizons, me and my brother didn't. And we were encouraged and pushed to go out into the world and try to earn a bit of money and gain some independence and life experience. The only reason I ended up going to uni was because I felt so scared not to, which was a good thing in the end. But until that, I had never stepped out of my comfort zone for anything, no matter how much my parents pleaded the case that it was going to make me more confident. I quit every single childhood club I was in, ballet, swimming, piano, because once I became a teen, I felt so uncomfortable. We were encouraged to the point that it often caused a lot of friction with our parents, and a lot of shame, and it was largely due to crippling social anxiety. You probably wouldn't believe it now as I pour my heart out to millions of people in these videos, but my social anxiety and shyness was so severe, I struggled to go out in public. I struggled to talk to people, make eye contact, and that last part is still true sometimes. I'd have to get my mum to order my food for me, like speak to the waiter and order food for me when we went out to eat, and that carried on into my 20s. I just found existence so excruciating and embarrassing. I felt like an imposter wherever we went and whoever I talked to. And like one day people were going to figure out that there was something off with me, and that feeling was constantly looming over me. People are watching me. People don't think I'm meant to be here. I can see it in their eyes. And my brother, he's 27 now, he still feels this way. And it still massively impacts his life. He's only now just gotten a part-time job. So it was partly that, and partly due to just a lack of foresight and motivation for a lot of things that other people just did without really thinking about it. And from a young age, we were just so fundamentally different to our stepsisters, despite being raised in a similar way. I look back now at when I had my son at 23, I was still so much like a teenager in so many ways. And even when I had my second son at 28, I was way more impulsive than I am now. And this only ever being able to deal with the now and basically the future does not exist rubbed off into every area of my life. People often explain this phenomenon as we see time as either now or not now. And everything in the future is not now, and so I'm not going to worry about it until then. And then is always pushed back further and further from grasp, because now is now, and then is not now. I'd only do projects for school and uni right at the very last minute. I could not get myself to do things little by little over time. And I was the same with tidying my home and picking up throughout the day. Keeping up with it just did not seem urgent. And I'm talking at uni, you could not see the floor of my room, couldn't see a surface. One of my best friends reminded me the other day that I'd sleep next to old takeaway boxes, like they'd be next to me in my bed. We'd have no pots to eat off of because I'd just let them pile up until there was nothing left to use. Any clothes I wore, they'd be washed on the same day I needed them, at best the night before. Food would be going mouldy under my bed, and I'd just leave it there and think, sort it later. And then later never came. And this is not a reflection of the way I was raised. I lived in a home with my mum and stepdad who were very tidy and house proud and who tried to teach me, but I was different to them. I know now me and my brother were neurodivergent, but we spent our entire childhoods thinking that we just weren't good enough and that there was something wrong with us. And if you've seen videos of me cleaning my dad's house and my auntie's house, I think I put forward a very compelling case that being messy isn't always learned behaviour. I mean, it can be, but it very often is genetic. I didn't live with my dad or my auntie, and they are just like me. They struggle terribly with keeping on top of their space. And they were also raised in tidy households. Behaviour was modelled and they were taught what they needed to do. My auntie was raised with my mum, who's very tidy. Same parents. It's a very fascinating topic, and I could ramble on about it for hours. But yeah, for some of us, keeping things clean and tidy is just harder sometimes. Anyway, so let's talk about what we're doing on the screen now. So now everything's all laid out, I'm sorting it into categories. I'm focusing on what I'm keeping at this point, and then I'm putting them back into the wicker baskets. And we're going to keep the baskets because there's no point in buying new stuff just for the sake of it. And then we're going to get rid of the shelves they came in. And then I'm going to lay them out in the cupboard closer to the door so that everything's visible and accessible. And hopefully, this is going to stop me from getting overwhelmed and just seeing the cupboard as a write-off and throwing everything in there on top of each other. And also, hopefully, this will help me keep more organised and I'll be able to find my hairbrush and find my hairdryer and find specific eyeliners or moisturisers. And knowing where everything is going to have a knock-on effect into the rest of my day. Maybe it's the difference between arriving somewhere on time or even choosing to go in the first place. And that's the power of decluttering and having a system of organisation that works for you. It benefits your entire life. Years ago, the mess still would bother me, and I'd love it on the rare occasion I did muster up the motivation to clean, but I just did not have that drive to consistently keep up with it. And it's only until recently that I have consistently kept up with my house. And my point with the entire ramble up until this point is, I've come a long way, and you can too. I've gone through many different stages and phases. I've changed in some ways randomly, and I've changed in other ways through pure grit and determination. And so I want anybody watching who's struggled chronically since childhood with mess and chaos and lack of organisation in their lives, or maybe you've fallen into mess due to issues later on in life and you feel like you can't pull yourself out of it. You are not alone, and you have so much potential. Your capacity for change and growth won't disappear after a certain age. So what I'm doing here is bagging up stuff I'm going to donate and stuff I'm going to throw away, like out-of-date products and makeup. And from the declutter of this cupboard and the declutter of Ike's clothes, we've gotten rid of 3 bags worth of stuff, which doesn't seem like much, but the difference it's made is huge. And throughout this series so far, we have gotten rid of 20 bags of stuff. And I do need to reiterate, we do donate and rehome stuff that's still in decent shape. And yeah, I started this channel 2 years ago and I was a different person 2 years ago. I was a different person to that a year later, and I'm a different person now than I was at the end of last year. And I have videos on this channel that will meet you where you are, whatever stage that might be. In complete overwhelm, where you need help to clean up big messes in one go and get a clean slate to be able to start over with. Or maybe you're trying to turn your life around and build routine with a brain that struggles with routine. Scroll through my videos and I will meet you where you are. And we can hopefully grow together, however long it takes us, setbacks included. There is no judgment and no shame here. We have the capacity to improve our situations and our lives, and we're not going to let things hold us back this year. We're not going to let our past struggles, our old patterns, or the way our minds work hold us back and make us believe that we are stuck and we are not capable. We can improve our situations and our homes, and we're going to be the creative, out-of-the-box, resourceful people that we are, and we're going to work with our fantastic brains and find ways forward that work for us and make our lives easier. And for people here who don't struggle with that mental block when it comes to housework and organisation, but who are dealing with mobility issues or chronic illness, I guess this video has been more geared towards the former today and the mental aspect of things, but I want to share something I recently saw on Instagram, and that is doctors say for a healthy person to understand chronic fatigue, they would have to stay awake for 3 days straight and then try to function. And my point there is, people who have not experienced what you're going through can never truly understand what it's like. Your 100% might be someone else's 10%, but it's still your 100%, and you deserve all the praise and recognition in the world for that. And that goes for neurodivergent folk too. If someone can't acknowledge the effort you're putting in, they're not worth your upset. Try not to compare yourself and your home, and most importantly your energy and activity levels and how much you can get done in one day, to someone who isn't dealing with the same hurdles as you. I say this to every single person watching today though, no matter your circumstance. Decluttering and reducing the amount of excess things you have to deal with in your home will make life easier. Just as they say you can't outrun a bad diet, you can't out-tidy a cluttered house. And I know that's grammatically incoherent, but it's true. It will feel like you're exhausting yourself and putting all of this time in to reap absolutely no reward or 5 seconds of peace and tidiness? Keeping on top of a house is hard enough as it is, especially for those of us who have kids and pets. But I'm only halfway through this declutter, and I started at the beginning of the year. I've decluttered our shoe cupboard, my mountain of a laundry pile, my children's toys in their bedroom. And those 3 things alone have transformed how this home functions and how we function within it. The difference in the house and my ability to keep up with daily tasks is incredible, and we've still got such a long way to go with it. But up to this point, it's given me more free time because things don't become overwhelming so quickly, and that means I don't spend as long getting the house back to base level. And that means more time spent on hobbies and quality time with the people I love. I am having breakfast, lunch and dinner sat at the dinner table with my family, chatting about our day, because our kitchen table isn't cluttered with stuff. We used to eat everything on the settee in the living room, and because we were in the living room, we put the TV on and didn't really interact as much with each other. Food would get smushed into the rug and the settee, which meant more cleaning for me and Charlie. And I used to be in so much denial, and I'd say, we like this is just what works for us. Really? We just didn't have much of a choice. Because I've decluttered the shoe cupboard, and that's in episode 1 if you want to see how bad that was. But now, I don't start the day with stress levels up to my eyeballs because I can't find everybody's shoes and coats. We're not late to school and work every day. I know where everyone's uniform is. I feel more on the ball and at ease. I'm able to work on things that I just found too much and felt like I didn't have time for before. And that's prioritising my mindfulness routine, reading, daily walks and portion control. Because all of these things are linked. Have a cluttered, overwhelming house to the point you dread every day and you think, I've got to sort this today and I don't know how long it's going to take me. And then it's just going to be messy again and I'll be back to square one. So I'm just going to comfort eat and binge because it makes me feel better in the moment. And then afterwards, you just feel so out of control and so bad about yourself in so many different ways. I know personally, I felt for so long like I was letting everybody in my house down. Of course, that's not true and nobody in the house thought that. But I didn't know what to do to make things better because I was giving everything I had to give to still just feel like I was treading water. I made everything harder than it needed to be because I didn't realise that it could be easier. And that things didn't have to be perfect to be good enough. My house is never going to be pristine. I've got 2 kids, and there are other factors that influence the way our house looks from day to day. There will always be things out on the side, because keeping things out and visible reminds us to keep up with daily habits like brushing our teeth. I've got whiteboards everywhere with my to-do lists on. We'll probably never be up to date with the laundry. There's always going to be toys on the floor everywhere and grubby handprints on the walls and door handles. But this house feels like home now and not a place I want to run away from. And our mental health has improved massively purely because we don't have as much stuff and because I stopped trying to force myself to adhere to routines that I couldn't keep up with. I found ways to modify my house to suit my brain and work schedule and patterns and limits and capabilities. And I think that's something we should all be working towards, rather than trying to make our life and home look like someone else's. Up until so recently, I wanted to get this declutter done before Christmas, and I mean all of the declutter that you've seen so far and will see in the future. And I was stressing out so much about not being able to, but I had so much else on my plate. Then, after I didn't get it done before Christmas, I wanted to get everything decluttered by the end of January. And it's been this kind of behaviour, putting deadlines over my own head, that was actually hindering my progress. It was making me anxious and irritable. It made me feel like I was a failure. Now, it gets done when it gets done, and that is good enough. So yeah, that's the 20-minute speed clean in the bedroom up. I hope this video was valuable and helpful, and I will see you in the next one.